Hey friends, it's Anna. Happy almost December. Today I am so excited to share this month's bullet journal setup with you guys. I'm kind of obsessed with this theme, and I also added some special spreads for this month that I don't normally do. So grab a cup of coffee or some tea, get cozy, and let's journal together. I'm starting off with a cover and quote page, which I actually don't normally include in my monthly setups. I usually make my calendar into my cover page just for efficiency, but I felt like I wanted to make December special because of the holidays and it's the last month of the year. So I wrote the month up top with my Tombow calligraphy brush pen, and as you can see, I decided on Christmas gnomes for this month's theme. So I started drawing 3 little gnomes at the bottom of the page. I've had this idea to use for a December theme for so long, maybe even since last year when I got some little Christmas gnomes as decorations for our house. I think these guys are so cute and funny, and we're going to make them festive with lots of different patterns and Christmas colors. They're also really simple to draw. I'm using this style that's been popular the past few years with a big round nose and a hat covering the eyes. And then I'll keep switching up the beard shapes all throughout the setup for some variety. I'll also have some lady gnomes with braids instead of beards in later pages. The beards make up most of their shape, but I fill in any remaining space with a simple oval for their torso. I also decided to add some little circles for shoes and some short little arms with gloves because I thought those made the gnomes even cuter. The gnome in the middle is holding a sprig of Christmas greenery. As you'll see, I'll use some greenery designs to kind of complement the gnomes all throughout the setup. I'm finishing the last gnome here by adding some texture to his beard, just with some semi-random contour lines. I'll also go back and add a few contour lines to the body and shoes and arms like I did with the first gnome. Even just with those few lines, I think it really makes a difference to elevate the drawing and keep it from looking like a simple cartoon. Before adding the color, I'm moving over to our quote page on the left side. As it's the month of Christmas, I'm using part of the Bible verse, Psalm 96:11, "Let the heavens rejoice and let the earth be glad." I'm doing the quote in 2 different fonts. The first and third lines were with my typewriter font stamp set, and then I'm writing the remaining lines in a calligraphy style. I think it always looks more striking when you have a more boxy serif style font with a more flowing calligraphy font because of that contrast between the two. I'm edging the verse with some more greenery sprigs, and that's it for this simple quote page. On to the last step of adding some color. I'm sticking to red and a few shades of green for all the gnome outfits. I'll try to show you most of the colors I use on screen, and they'll also be listed in the description box below, along with all the other supplies I use in this setup. For the cover page, I decided to go with full red for the middle gnome since it pops a bit more, and then I'll do green on the sides, starting with this dark green for the hats. Like changing up the beard styles, I also went with a variety of patterns for the hats. We've got plaid, polka dots, stripes. I love how these all look together. The same art style keeps the picture cohesive, but all the different patterns make it visually interesting. For the bodies of the green gnomes, I'm using this lighter green. I felt like coloring in too much space with a darker green would be too much, too dark, and I do like how this lighter green keeps the picture feeling bright and fresh. I'm using a beige color for all the noses and a light brown for the shoes and gloves. And then I'm also going to go over all those little contour lines with another layer to make them darker and keep that depth that the contour adds. To complete the gnomes, I'm using this really light gray for the beards, just going over all the texture lines. The gray is really light and subtle, but I think it makes the beards and the gnomes overall look like 10 times better. I'm using the light green for the sprigs on the quote page and that the gnome is holding, and red for the little berries. And then for the last step of these cover pages, I'm going to add some color to the words. I'm doing a simple drop shadow to the calligraphy lines of the verse, and then I'm going to add a line of green underneath the December title, but following the bottom edges of the word itself. And those are my completed cover pages. I am already loving this setup so much. The next 2 pages will make up my calendar spread. Starting with the title up top, I'm writing December with the brush tip side of this black Tombow dual brush pen. I mentioned this in my last video, but recently I've gotten really into adding flourishes to my calligraphy, so I added some curls coming off the first and last letters. The real reason I even started doing this is because now that I'm drawing the calendar outline, you'll see that there will be some empty space beneath the title on the left page, and I was running into this spacing issue on my calendar spread every month, not knowing what to do with it until I realized calligraphy flourishes could fill that area. I'm stamping the letters for the days of the week up top. My calendar is 5 by 5 squares for each day, and I'm using a standard A5 sized notebook. I like having this bigger calendar because it's just enough room to write any events or travel I have planned, and then of course I do more detailed planning on my weekly spreads. For the art on this spread, I'm going to do 2 gnomes on either side of the calendar. I was thinking about how I could keep these pages interesting because just a bunch of gnomes standing there might get old. So I decided to have all the gnomes be in various Christmas settings or doing Christmas themed activities. So we'll have gnomes getting a Christmas tree, giving gifts, even 2 gnomes standing under a mistletoe, which is adorable. I can't wait for you guys to see that one. But this gnome here is reaching for some winter greenery that I'm drawing coming off the calendar. You know, maybe this is one of the gnomes in a few pages under the mistletoe, and this is when he was collecting the mistletoe to get ready to woo his lady gnome. On the left side, I drew a gnome popping out of the calendar, waving to his friend on the other side, and now I'm adding some stripes to the right gnome. I thought it'd be fun to switch it up and add a patterned jumper instead of hat. To finish off the drawings, I'm adding some more leaves to the bottom left of the calendar. For the greenery throughout the setup, you'll see me mainly use 2 designs. First, as a base, this really simple vine with basic alternating leaves, and then coming off that, I added a few sprigs that are designed after mistletoe. They have branching, thin little leaves, and bunches of berries. You'll see me color in the berries red because I thought that's what would look best, but mistletoe berries are actually white, so that was a little bit of an artistic liberty. Another fun fact about mistletoe, a lot of people link the tradition of kissing under a mistletoe back to Norse mythology. There's a story that Frigg, the mother of the god Balder, used magic to make sure no plant on Earth would kill her son. But the spell didn't reach mistletoe, which grows from trees. So Loki, who we now all know from the Marvel universe, used a spear made from mistletoe to kill Balder. From there, the connection is kind of unclear, but some stories go that Frigg declared mistletoe to be a symbol of love after her son's death and kissed people that passed under it. So when the tradition of kissing under mistletoe became popularized in England in the 19th century, people connected it with that Norse mythology. There's some fun holiday-themed history for you guys. At this point, I left the color with the drawings, but I ended up going back and adding some color to the calendar and title later, so you'll see that in the final flip through at the end. I'm unsure if I like it better like this or with the extra color, but that's my final calendar page. Next up is a spread I'm titling Notes for December. This is a spread I came up with to help with planning my month beyond just what events are on my calendar, and it also gives me a place to reflect on the month as well. I'm writing the title up top with my calligraphy pen, and I'm drawing 3 boxes below. If you've been following along with me, you'll be familiar with these boxes because I've been doing this page the same way for most of 2023 now actually. And I've stuck with it because I think this page really does help me get organized for the month and also stay on track each time I'm filling out my weekly spreads. The top left box is for intentions, and I titled each space with my alphabet stamp set. The intentions aren't for specific goals or tasks, but more like general focuses or priorities that can help me frame my month. For example, I had kind of a crazy November and got really off track with a lot of my typical routines. So for December, I think my main intentions are going to surround getting back into my regular morning routine, sleep schedule, and prioritizing all my normal habits again. Below the box for intentions is one for tasks, so the specific things I want to check off my to-do list in December. Oftentimes, I'll add little sections in the box for YouTube and chores or any other category that might have a few tasks. Sometimes I'll start the month with a few things on the list if I already know there are some tasks I want to get done, and then I'll also add things throughout the month as they come up. The box on the right page is for reflections, so I'll fill that out at the end of the month. I usually journal responses to questions like what went well, what didn't go well, what could you do better next month, things like that. And I think taking the time to actually reflect on the good and the bad and the whys behind them is really helpful for making future goals or positive changes. Like, I know for November reflections, I'm probably going to journal about how it was a busy month and that caused me to get really off on my routines and how that made life even more chaotic. And it's also a space where I can brainstorm on how I could prevent that in the future. Like, maybe I should adjust my routine so that they can hold up better during busier times. So I like that these monthly reflections make me think about these things. For the art on these pages, I started out with a gnome sitting on a little sled who looks like he just picked out his Christmas tree. This was directly based off of a drawing I saw on Pinterest. I'll link the pin below if you want to check out the original artist. In the middle of the left page, I'm drawing some more of that winter greenery with a poinsettia flower in the middle. I love the top left gnome. I thought it'd be so cute to include a lady gnome, so I gave her some braids and a striped scarf trailing into the intentions box. I thought that was another fun way to mix up the designs of the gnomes, and I just love her braids for some reason. They're so adorable to me. I also think it looks nice when the art kind of overlaps with the functional areas of the spread. It kind of blends the two together and makes the whole spread feel more connected. So I had the braids and scarf falling on top of the intentions box, and the hat of our tree gnome along with some greenery on that page go into the reflections box. The last step for this spread is adding the color. I didn't go into any of these spreads with a set plan for what colors I was going to use on the gnomes. I just tried to balance out the green and red as best I could. And that's my finished notes for December spread. I really like how this one looks. Moving to our next pages, which will be my habit tracker on the left and mood tracker on the right. Starting with my habit tracker, and I forgot to film myself writing the title, but I used a serif style font and filled it in with my black Tombow dual brush pen. Beneath the title, I'm drawing the outline of 5 mini calendars, each for one of the 5 habits I'm going to track in December. Again, you'll be familiar with this format if you've been following along with me. It's served me really well so far this year. After completing the calendars, I'm labeling the days of the week up top, and then I'll write the name of each habit below the calendar in a simple cursive font. For each day I complete that habit, I'll put a little X for the corresponding day in the calendar. And here on the side, I'm adding how often I'd like to complete each habit. Most of these aren't actually things I need to be doing every single day of the week, so I like to write down my specific goal, and that way I can compare the number of X's to that goal. I track pretty much the same habits each month. These are things that I'm continually working on and want to be reminded of, like drinking enough water, meditating, etc. I might change some of these habits with the start of the new year next month, as some of these have gotten pretty routine for me, and I might want to start working on some new things next year. 2023 was actually my first year of using the habit tracker regularly, and I do think it's really helped me. Like, for example, I have been way more consistent with doing a morning devotional this year than I've ever been. Now it really is an established habit, so I might be able to replace my devotional tracker next year with a new habit that I want to start working on. With that little bit of space in the bottom right corner, this is where I'm drawing my 2 gnomes standing underneath the mistletoe. I want to thank my friend Kalina for giving me this idea. We were working together when I was sketching out this setup, and she said, wouldn't it be so cute if there were 2 gnomes under a mistletoe? And it absolutely is, so thank you for that adorable idea, Kalina. If you guys have any ideas for gnome drawings as well, please let me know, because I think it'd be fun to draw a different gnome on each weekly spread. I'm only doing my first December weekly in this setup, so let me know your ideas for cute gnomes and maybe I can draw some of them in later weeklies. And then I'll move on to the right page, which will be my mood tracker. I'm starting by writing the title up top with my calligraphy font. My mood tracker setup is really simple. For the second half of 2023, I've been using the 1 line a day method. So instead of trying to pick just one mood that represents your whole day and assigning that a color, which is what I used to do, in this system, I have a full line across the page to write a quick description for each day. I drew that single vertical line to create 2 columns. On the left side is where I'll go in later and write the dates of the month on each row, and then the right side is where I have the rest of that row to journal about my mood. I love that I have the space to write multiple moods for the day if I want, or I can write context for why I felt a certain way. I did like when I was using the coloring system before. It was helpful to see patterns of common moods. Like if you assigned blue to being anxious, you could just glance at the mood tracker, and if there's a lot of blue, you can quickly tell that pattern. So in order to get the best of both worlds, I'm also going to add a color key at the bottom with common moods. At the end of the month, I'll go through my daily descriptions and use these colors to highlight the respective moods. So I get that benefit of more easily seeing patterns through the colors, but I can also read the full line if I want more details. Since there's not a lot of extra space, the art on this page is pretty minimal. I decided to just include a vine of the Christmas greenery. I know the gnomes are the star of the show here, but I'm also really happy with how all the botanical drawings have looked. I think the 2 different leaf shapes and the 2 different shades of green with the red berries look really good together. And those are my final tracker spreads. This next spread is a new one that I created for December and specifically for the Christmas season. This is my gift list for Christmas. I'm titling it Season of Giving, and I accidentally started to spell season wrong. I wrote an E instead of an O. So you can see I'm using a mix of whiteout and a white gel pen to turn that E into an O. Mistakes are pretty much inevitable when you bullet journal, so it's definitely helpful to have some tools on hand to help cover those up. So I'm finishing the title, and then I added some single sprigs of greenery on either side. This is a spread I'm planning on using to keep track of the Christmas gifts I'm giving this year. So I'm creating a chart. There will be 2 identical charts on both pages where I can write the person, the gift, and keep track of things like if it's been bought or wrapped, etc. I'm labeling each of the columns up top. Each row is going to be for a different person. The B column stands for if I've bought the gift, the A stands for arrived, and the W stands for wrapped. So I can just add a check in each of those spaces when they're completed for each person's gift. And then that last column is for the cost of the gift, so I can keep track of how much I'm spending on Christmas presents. I make a chart like this pretty much every year because I have a big family and there's a lot of gifts to keep track of, but this is the first year I'm putting it in my bullet journal and decorating it all cute, so I'm excited to have it right here as part of my December setup. Below the gift list, I drew a Santa gnome with his big sack of gifts, and then I thought it would be fun if I drew it like the sack was so full it busted and Santa's just leaving a little trail of gifts behind him that felt perfectly positioned and upright, of course. For the presents, I'm drawing a variety of box sizes and shapes and adding ribbons on the sides and bows on the top. I'm also drawing some sprigs of pine needles on the two outer gifts. The middle present looks a little wonky. If I wanted these to look more proportional, I could have used rulers to make the lines straight and even with each other, but I usually don't mind little imperfections like that in my bullet journal art because it maintains that hand-drawn feeling. Now I'm finishing off the spread with the color, and I wanted the bows and ribbons on the presents to be green and red, so I decided to keep the rest of the presents a neutral color, so I'm using that beige for a base. I think I said this in my last video too, but I really love this point in each spread when the functional spaces and art is all drawn and then it basically becomes a coloring book. It's so relaxing to just color in the pages and also to see them come to life with that final touch. I really love how this one turned out, and I'm really excited to use my bullet journal for tracking my gifts this year. Last up for this December setup will be my first weekly spread. It takes up 4 pages in my journal because I do like to have a full half page for each day. We are almost to week 49 of 2023, if you can believe it. So I'm drawing some lines to divide each page in half. Each of these columns will be my planning area for one day. On this right column of the last page, I'm adding the title tasks because this is where I put my rolling weekly task list. Then I fold the middle page in the spread in half so you can see the task list no matter what day of the week I'm on. I use the rolling weekly for things that I know I want to get done this week, but I don't have a specific day they need to be done on. For example, I know I want to put up our Christmas lights sometime this week, so I'll just write that here and then I can determine later during the week which day I want to do that. I try to create each weekly spread and fill out the rolling weekly tasks each Sunday before the week starts because I'm a Monday start person. I also fill out any events I have on each daily column at the beginning of the week, and this is also when I'll reference my notes for December page, 1, so I can be reminded of my intentions for the month, and 2, so I can add any tasks from my monthly to-do list to this weekly list if I feel like I can get them done that week. And then each morning, it's the last step of my morning routine to sit down with my journal and plan the day ahead using the daily columns. That's also when I'll fill out my habit and mood tracker. So that's kind of how I use my journal on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. I'm keeping the art on this weekly pretty simple. Like I said before, if you have any cute gnome drawing ideas, let me know so maybe I can use those for future weeklies. I'm decorating the first pages of the weekly just with another vine of leaves and mistletoe. I like to make the art line up whenever you fold that middle page in half. So you'll see in a second when I fold the page, the vines on both of the right pages will line up like they're part of the same drawing. For the final step of the spread, I'm coloring in the greenery and the berries, and that will complete my December bullet journal setup. I'll fold the page in a second so we can see the finished weekly, and then we'll do a final flip through to look at the whole setup together. I very much enjoyed creating these pages. It was so fun to get into the holiday spirit with this theme. I hope you guys enjoyed the setup and watching along, and I hope you're having a wonderful holiday season so far. Thank you guys for being here, and feel free to subscribe if you want to stick around for more bullet journal content. Thank you again, and I'm wishing you all a beautiful December.